Hi, everyone. Welcome to Between Two Speakers, where we talk to speakers and professionals about speaking. I'm Mariana Swallow. I am a professional public speaking coach and workshop leader. I also teach business and professional communications at Loyola University in Chicago. You can find me at marianaswallow.com.
And I'm Randy, a writer and a storytelling strategist. And you can find me at firststorystrategies.com. Mary, I'm very excited about our guest today, who's a friend of ours, Olin, who's a real estate agent with App Properties. And you can find him at olinsellschicago.com. And Olin, welcome to Between Two Speakers.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Good morning to you both.
What we want to talk to Olin about today is about the language of sales. And he is one of the best at doing what I think is kind of the great relationship building sales techniques and the language that goes along with that. So Olin, if you don't mind, just to start by telling us a little bit about your sales philosophy and you speak to people about their home needs.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been in the real estate world for a little over 12 years now. And I started out in a position that was completely different to what I'm doing now. And so I think that my sales understanding and techniques have evolved over those years. So I started out working in the leasing business where I was working with leasing clients. And obviously, they have one thing in mind, and that's just finding the cheapest apartment available. And I started doing that, and I kind of learned how that worked and learned how to evolve that now to working with buyers and sellers who have a myriad of other things on their mind. It's not about just finding the quickest, easiest apartment. It's about, if you're a buyer, finding a great deal in a great location, making sure that all your needs are met. And then on the flip side, if you're a seller, being able to sell at top dollar for the shortest amount of time on market, making it a great transaction for both sides. And so I kind of look back at what I learned being a baby in the real estate industry and how that's gotten me to where I do work with buyers and sellers today. And it's ironic that we're talking about sales because in Illinois, they actually changed the title of what we do. So we are not considered salespeople or a real estate salesperson any longer. They actually changed the title, I think it was 2012 maybe, or maybe a little bit earlier, to broker. And so that's why you hear the word real estate broker or brokerage services, is because sales sometimes does get a bad rap, unfortunately. And there are a lot of sales people still, but that's just not what we do. And specifically, my philosophy is I do want to make the sale, obviously, but it's more about making sure that all parties are happy. So you have to listen. You have to really, truly understand what that person is looking to do, because inevitably, if they're not getting what they want, they can just walk away as quick as they came. And so I really dig in and try to listen to the client. I've always said that I am not a transactional broker. I'm a relationship broker. And that's what I focus on is, hey, Mayor, what are you looking for? What's important to you? Do you need to be near a train line or do you need a garage parking space? How many people are going to be living in this property and do you see yourself here for 3 or 5 years? That's how deep you need to get with someone, rather than just saying, all right, great, let's go out Saturday and look at something. And it's just very transactional. So that's kind of what I've learned over the years by starting as a leasing agent and then building myself into this business, that you really have to dig deep and not just try to sell somebody on a property, but actually learn what they want.
That that's great, and I'm thinking from the customer perspective, how that must come across to them so differently, the way you're approaching it versus the way that some other people may approach it transactionally.
I sure hope so. You guys have probably all received those phone calls where somebody's trying to sell you something on the phone, and it's not something that everybody loves to happen. And you don't want that from your real estate broker either, someone who you're putting your trust in to make a very large transaction. So you really want to make sure that they feel heard and wanted as your client, because you're taking care of them in a huge part of their life.
Olin, can you talk a little bit about the persuasive aspects of what you do? Because I realize, and I know from knowing you and like what Randy has said, that you aren't the, slimy over the phone, hey, let me push you into buying something. But I imagine that you have to prepare yourself to, or prepare what you're going to say, or prepare for meetings in a certain way that tie into that persuasive aspect of the sales aspect of what you do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. From the very first time I meet somebody, whether they are buying or selling, we automatically set expectations. And I want to make sure from the beginning that they understand that that is not my position. I'm
Mhm,
not there to be an arm twister. I'm there to be an advisor. I take on the advisor role.
mhm.
If we find a property that you love and you can't find anything wrong with it and you're ready to move, jump on it. Chicago doesn't always have the market that allows you time to sleep on it. You know, everybody wants to sleep on it or marinate or talk to their partner overnight. Sometimes you don't have that. So I set the expectations from the very beginning of kind of what our timeline is going to be. And we have a myriad of meetings prior to going out and looking at property. We've already gotten a buyer pre-approved. And so you know that you're set and ready to pull the trigger whenever you're there. So when we find the property we like, they know that I know that it's the time to go, and they're not going to be persuaded by me in a negative way. The art of persuasion in sales is about giving the facts that they need. So I never want to twist somebody's arm into making a quick decision, but I always make sure that they're aware of the timing. So if I know that there are other people also potentially writing an offer that day, if I know that it is going to have an open house that weekend where there's going to be a lot more eyes on it, there's the art of making sure they understand the timing and don't feel pressured, but do feel the pressure, if that makes sense. Because you want them to understand it's not like, you know, walking into a clothing store, you get to try on a shirt really quick. And then if you don't like it, you can return it. This is buying a home. So you do want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. But at the same time, you don't want to miss the opportunity just because you need to sleep on it overnight. So once they understand from the very beginning of our meeting and working together that neither one of us are going to push each other except for a positive push. It's just, if you know, let's make a decision. If you do need to think on it, there's the potential you might miss out. And as long as those expectations are met, I think both parties respect each other a lot more.
That makes complete sense because that why helping them understand why they can't sleep on it from a reality standpoint, as opposed to if you sleep on it, I might lose this commission, which might be the impression that they
Right.
get from some of the pushier types. So that persuasion comes from building up the trust. And tying this back into speaking, I think that also would be the same if you were public speaking and kind of audience as well.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because some of the partners that I work with that are real estate attorneys or real estate lenders, we do first time home buyer seminars where we are speaking and we're talking to buyers and people who are interested in getting into the real estate world. And we have to stand there and make sure that we're not preaching at them, but that we're also not speaking too elementary to them. We want to make sure everybody knows everything. And one of the things that you just said, Randy, about not making a commission, I don't shy away from telling people how I get paid. I think that's very important because if a buyer doesn't understand what my role is, then why are they going to trust me and respect me with my time? You know, I could meet you today and you not close on your property until May, and I get paid $0 until you close. So unless they understand that you are giving them all of your time and energy and respect, not even knowing if the transaction is going to come to fruition at all, or there's a myriad of things that can happen in between now and then, they then respect you more and understand that this is your job and that you do need to get paid, but that it comes at a later time. I always bring it up in the very beginning so that we're all on the same page too.
I love that, and the fact that you mentioned education is persuasion reminds me of something I haven't thought about in a long time, which is my freshman year of college when I was in a department-wide public speaking competition, and the judges disqualified me. They said that my speech was supposed to be persuasive, and it came across as educational. And luckily, my professor, Mayor, thank you, teachers are amazing, stepped in and backed me up because he said, in my class, I teach that education is persuasion.
Mhm.
So if he was not coming across as persuasive enough, if he was laying the groundwork with information, then that counts. And I got back into the competition. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but you're right. That's a lesson that I've learned, and I think we all can appreciate from a sales perspective too.
Well, without sounding pompous, there is a certain amount of education that you have to provide your client with so that they ultimately trust you. And in Chicago, you can throw a stone and hit a realtor. So it's like, why would somebody choose me over the next person that they see on the street? So I always want to educate the client. I always want to make sure that they understand everything. I'd rather them know more than me or know more than most buyers would, just so that they are educated on the process. And so I've, over my years in the business, I've taken a number of classes to better educate myself. And I think that that's necessary in this sales business of any sort of sales professional, that you're always continually educating yourself. And I'm so glad you got back into that competition, Randy. That makes me happy, because I know you're so good at speaking and what you do. So you deserve that too.
Thanks. Thank
Same
you.
here.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, and I just have one quick question with regard to the, educating your seller and giving them all the information they need. That's great, but I also wonder, is there a time when you ever just completely drop it and back off completely? Because maybe this person does need time to digest, or maybe they're not ready, or there's some kind of whatever going on, whether it's anxiety or whatever, and maybe they're not going to make a decision, but you just need to give them space. Is there ever a time to just kind of back off as the person in the broker's role?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually have a perfect example of that I've been able to use with other clients whenever they've asked that very, very same question. Um, Not in every market, not in every neighborhood, not every client is going to need to make that very, very quick decision. There are a lot of times where there is time to sleep on it, and there is the time for them to come back and maybe view a property multiple times before moving on it. So the example I used earlier is not 100%. It's just a little more common in a big city with a lot of moving pieces. A lot of times there are clients who need to step back and think on it, and maybe they do miss out on a property, and then it kind of gives them the push for the next time that they're making an offer. So again, never pushing anybody, never twisting anyone's arm to make a decision. I think that it just kind of organically works out in whatever position that we're in whatever scenario we're in. The example I was going to say to you, I had a client who I thought was more educated on the selling and buying process than they actually were, because they had done it multiple times before. This individual enlisted me to sell their home and help them buy a new one. So we initially looked at the comps around their home to see where we would price their home. And then he wanted to find a new place first before selling his, which is a very typical order of events. You want to make sure you have somewhere to move. So we kind of put the sale of his home on the back burner, looked at a bunch of properties to the tune of almost 6 months together, working together. Again, this is me working for free because I'm not paid until the end of the transaction. And when we found the right property for him, he was ready to make an offer. He said, all right, so what can we sell my property for? Let's get all the paperwork rolling so that I know what my net that I'm going to make can now go into my new property. Once we put all the numbers together, he looked at me and said, well, why am I paying you a commission to sell my home? You're getting paid a commission on the buy side. And I said, that's not how it works. These are two separate transactions. I'm working to sell your home, and therefore I have to pay another broker out. And on the buy side, I've been working with you this whole time, and you're not paying for that. And he just did not comprehend it, and thought that since I was selling one property and helping buy another property, that he didn't have to pay me. So right then and there, I had to put my foot down and say, that's not how it works. I'm sorry that you were misinformed. If you want some time to think about it, that's fine. He said, nope, I don't want any time to think about it at all. It's either all or nothing. And I was like, okay, well, then we're done here. And I, in essence, fired the client after having spent 6 months with him, because he didn't have the education. He didn't have the understanding of how this business worked. And he thought he was going to pull something over on me and have me list his property for free because I'm helping him buy one. And that has always stuck in my brain, because I don't want anybody else to think that's how the whole buying process and selling process works. I want them to be educated from the beginning, because he missed out on a great property. And to this day, 4 years later, he still hasn't sold his home. He just kind of put the whole process off. So that's kind of a kick in the butt for me, to make sure that everybody is aware and educated from the very beginning.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Olin, with at Properties, olinsellschicago.com. Concierge level hospitality is what you provide, and what you call that education
You
and
got it.
relationship process. And thank you all for being here for another edition of Between Two Speakers. I'm Randy Ford.
I'm Mariana Swallow. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.